Addicts make them panic like it's East Atlantic. Jordan High summer school with my nigga Savage. Back when I was trying to plot on fucking Skinny Jasmine had a...
So the 49ers, I think, are going to be a surprise team this year. You know, a team that started 1-10 last year, and they won their last 5 games. You know, I think, you know, last year was Shanahan and Lynch's first year together, you know, GM and coach. And I think there was definitely, as we knew, there was going to be some growing pains to start the year, and it was going to be tough. And, you know, once they were able to get Jimmy G, things all turned around, you know, and there's a lot of talk about Jimmy G. Oh, he's just an all-right quarterback, and, you know, he hasn't really done anything thus far. You know, why did he get paid so much this last summer, this, that, and the other. But, I mean, when you're Jimmy G and you got Tom Brady scared, making sure Robert Kraft trades you, because they know you're the future of the team. They know whenever you implode, Belichick's going to replace you with Jimmy G. I'd want him gone too. But anyways, this team just takes a lot of players that are kind of undervalued, and they turn them into value. Talk about Marquise Goodwin, a guy that, you know, bounces around from team to team, a really fast guy, a guy that you see at the Olympics. He's that fast. Pierre Garçon, I remember watching him when he played, you know, for the Colts back in the day, Redskins the last couple of years. I think he's been on the 49ers last 2 years or so. If he can stay healthy, he's always a good player. Trent Taylor, a guy they drafted about 2 years ago or a year ago from, I think, Louisiana Tech. And then Dante Pettis, who they added in the draft this year, you know, promising young good player. On the offensive line, Joe Staley, Laken Tomlinson, Weston Richburg, Jonathan Cooper, Mike McGlinchey, the rookie from Notre Dame, probably butchered his name. George Kettle's the tight end. This guy played at Iowa. You know, him and C.J. Beathard really linked up last year. They both played at Iowa together. Really helped Kettle and Beathard get going. Beathard really showed some promise after, you know, he played pretty bad those first couple of games that they had him playing in. But after a while, he definitely started to play better. I was actually surprised by as good as he played last year. Talking about running backs, Matt Breida and Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon's the starter. Now, you know, Jerick McKinnon is a guy that played really good as a slot type guy last year, or like second running back, third down back type, behind Latavius Murray, you know, once Dalvin Cook went out. Now, he did get to play a good amount of time, and he was a good player. But it's funny how they brought him in. They paid him a good amount this year. He's going to be one of the main guys. Matt Breida played pretty good for them last year. Kyle can't say his fucking name. Fullback Kyle Juszczyk. I don't even know. I don't know how to say it at all. But this guy's not a bad tight end. I know that. He's made a couple of Pro Bowls. This guy was one of Flacco's favorite targets because Flacco always checks down to the fullback. But anyways, I think this is an all right offensive team. Nothing crazy to write home about. But I think Jimmy G's an underrated guy. I think that he's going to be able to, you know, be good enough, you know, have this team play good enough to be competing in games, you know, kind of like towards the end of last year. You know, there's a couple of close games that they had. I think, you know, if you can keep the games close, have Jimmy G an opportunity in the fourth quarter, I think he has enough weapons around him to get it done. Now, you know, these weapons that we're looking at on this offense are nothing crazy, nothing to just write home about, but it is, you know, they are pieces, and I think, you know, it really a lot's going to have to depend on Jimmy G. Garoppolo. Talking about their defense. Now, I don't think their defense is just crazy good, but I don't think it's bad. You know, I think it's a lot of guys that they've drafted over the last couple of years that, you know, are they going to pan out or not? You know, Eric Armstead, one of the guys. DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner's been really good since he's came in. Solomon Thomas, another one. Earl Mitchell. So that's their defensive line. A lot of those guys are young. You know, the Thomas, the Buckner, the Armstead. I think all those guys are from the Pac-12, either Oregon. I know Solomon Thomas, I think, is from Stanford. I think the other two guys are from Oregon. Eli Harold as a linebacker. Reuben Foster, very scary linebacker in Reuben Foster. I don't know. I think he had a lot of legal issues this last summer, so I don't know how available he's going to be on the year. Malcolm Smith, a guy that I think that used to play for the Seahawks, a good player. Fred Warner and Brock Coyle, some of the backup guys. Fred Warner is a rookie from BYU. Really liked what I've seen out of him the last couple of years. Brock Coyle came in and had tons of tackles. One of those underrated guys that just knows where the ball is. Richard Sherman slotted as a cornerback, and then Witherspoon, a cornerback. I think he's from Colorado a couple years ago. Jimmy Ward, Kwan Williams, some other cornerbacks they have here. Adrian Colbert is a free safety backed up by Jimmy Ward. I already said that name once, but he's the backup for the free safety and the cornerback. And then a guy that I think was going to have a really good year is Jaquiski Tart. I think is how you say his name, but Tart, I think he's going to have a really good year. He played really good at times last year for the secondary. I think he could be a really good player. I don't think this team has as good a defense as the Seahawks, and I think it's about par with their offense. So I don't necessarily know. I don't really know if this team's going to make the playoffs this year. It's going to really be if Jimmy G can be that elite, and I don't know if he's going to be that elite. So I think the 49ers are going to be good or better than they've been in the past, but I don't know how good they're going to be. I think that they've taken steps in the right direction, though. When you think about, Garoppolo, I think Garoppolo's been a good add. I think, of all the teams in the league that needed a quarterback, I think the 49ers have bettered their situation the most, maybe other than the Vikings who added Cousins. But I think Garoppolo was one of the best adds. He came in last year, and the kid could have gone 0-5, and you would have been like, well, you probably would have seen some promise. The kid went 5-0, and I think he's going to be good. And they add Jerick McKinnon. I think next you start adding some wide receivers to, Dante Pettis, Pierre Garçon. Think about if you could add someone like Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant could be a key piece to this team. A lot of these teams that are missing that X wide receiver, I try to plug in Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant fits on a lot of different teams well, this one included. Now the defense, I think the defense is really going to have to play collectively as a unit, have to play well. There's not a whole lot of guys on the defense that are just veterans other than, Richard Sherman. But, Richard Sherman's old at this point. There's a lot of young guys in the front seven that were really good in college but haven't necessarily panned out, maybe other than DeForest Buckner. So we'll see what happens with the 49ers. I don't think that they're a playoff team, but I think that they are better than 6-10. I think they could win maybe 8, maybe 9 games, maybe talk about maybe a wild card type thing. But I think definitely, 2 years from now, I think they're going to be competing with the Rams. I think the Rams and the Niners are going to have some really good games. Garoppolo versus Goff. You heard it here first. And then let's talk about their draft class. The obviously offensive line, Mike McGlinchey out of Notre Dame. Dante Pettis, they got second round. Fred Warner, they went for third round out of BYU. I like him. Travarius Moore, D-back, Southern Miss. Kentavious Street, defensive end from NC State. DJ Reed, I like this kid a lot from Kansas State. Marcel Harris from Florida, safety. Julian Taylor, defensive tackle, Temple. And then Richie James, wide receiver, Middle Tennessee. Richie James is one of my favorite wide receivers. He's been injured the last 2 years, so he's really fallen down draft boards. And I think it was just an all-right draft. I think they did, there's good players in this draft, not many big name prospects type other than, the offensive lineman from Notre Dame and maybe Pettis. But I think some good players here and there. Maybe they went for him a little early, didn't get that great of a draft grade. But I think they did all right. If you know some of these names on here. And another thing about the Niners, they're really in a position where they didn't just need to break the bank, and they needed a big time defensive player like a Bradley Chubb, or they didn't have to break the bank and just go after one of those huge prospects. I think they had a good team, and they were kind of just filling spots that they feel like they needed to fill in their lineup. So my team needs that I had for this offseason. Sign Jimmy G or draft a quarterback. Obviously, they signed Jimmy G. Address running back. Sign one or draft one or sign Hyde long term. So what they did, they added Jerick McKinnon as their running back. Good choice. Wide receivers. They need to draft wide receivers. They drafted obviously Dante Pettis. They got Trent Taylor in the draft last year. So that's good. Let's see. Find a tight end in free agency or draft. You know, I liked what I saw out of George Kittle last year, but I thought they might have needed to add a guy, more of a security blanket type. They didn't do that. They like Kittle. Address offensive line. You know, they brought in Jonathan Cooper from Dallas, Weston Richburg from the Giants. They lost Brandon Fusco and Daniel Kilgore and Trent Brown on the offensive line. So they didn't adjust the offensive line that well. You know, they added a couple of all-right players, but they didn't, you know, they still have Joe Staley, really good player. Draft middle linebackers, cornerbacks, or bring them in through a trade. So I thought they needed to bring some linebackers or cornerbacks in. They obviously brought Richard Sherman in. So they did a little bit. But I think this is an all right. I think it's an all right team. I think they're on their way up. I think, you know, they're definitely in a better, like, if we're talking about who's getting closer to making the playoffs again between the Seahawks and the 49ers, I think that the 49ers are definitely closer in that sense. Now, obviously, I think the Seahawks could jump them because the Seahawks do have good pieces. But just saying, you know, this year, I think the 49ers have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Seahawks do. But I don't think the chances are good for either one. Because I think the Rams are really going to run this division.
They say I sold my soul when I never had it in the first place. Hades was my birthplace. Crazy is the word they used to describe my tactics of Islam practice mixed with my mother's lies. I'm just trying to